Welcome to the Jill on Money podcast. It is Saturday, September 11th. It is the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And Mark and I were trying to figure out what was the appropriate way to mark this. It feels like we need to do something a little bit special. And so Mark had the genius idea, and he said, why don't we actually resurrect this interview that we had done with Admiral McRaven? The reason why we wanted to do this is that he is so incredibly inspirational. So Admiral William H. McRaven, he was really part of this effort to find and to actually eliminate Osama bin Laden. He is a lifelong career guy in the military. And he also wrote a book. And this book came as a result of a commencement speech that he delivered at the University of Texas. So this is a 2017 book. The book is called Make Your Bed, Little Things That Can Change Your Life and Maybe the World. And he sat with us in our studio in the old CBS studios. And so we thought this was a good way to commemorate 9/11. Here is the first part of our interview with Admiral McRaven. Describe just a little bit about having to present the president with options. Will he then say, Bill, what do you think? Or do you immediately say, here are your 5 options. This is what I think you should do?
No. The military leaders will come in and they will provide options. Now, if the president says, what is your number one option, then they're certainly prepared to provide that. But invariably, there's a dialogue, as there was with President Obama during the bin Laden raid. And I can tell you President Obama asked a lot of good questions, hard questions. What are the risks involved? What are our chances of success? I mean, these are kind of natural questions that the president will ask the military leaders.
And so when President Obama asked some of those hard questions, give me an example of some of the, like, what would he have asked?
Well, the president always wants to know the risk to the force. But in the case of the bin Laden raid, President Obama wanted to understand, okay, if I agree to this raid, then how much risk will be, what is the threat to your men on the ground? And how are you going to mitigate that risk? And so this is part of the plan that any military commander has to bring to a president is, force protection, get the mission done, make sure you're protecting the force as best you can, explain the risks to the president of the United States.
Is there ever a time where the president asked you a question and it made you rethink your position?
In the case of the bin Laden raid, yes. I mean, in terms of tightening up the planning on the mission. Again, I gave the president kind of a broad option. Look, we'll do a helicopter raid. We'll get on the ground. But if we encounter the Pakistanis, we have this option, or this option. And so the president and myself and a number of members of the national security team talked through those and helped refine the plan. Was
the bin Laden raid, which obviously it went in your direction, did you have apprehension about it?
No, never.
Really? How come?
No, because I knew what my forces were capable of doing. This was not a terribly complex mission. It was a long helicopter ride, about 162 miles from Afghanistan into Abbottabad, Pakistan. But I knew the SEALs were, highly trained. They were all combat veterans. The helicopter pilots were all combat veterans. We had, good overhead surveillance. We had appropriate packages in the event they got into trouble. So we had a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. And I was very confident that we could carry out any one of those if we needed to. So no, I wasn't. Again, you're always worried about the safety of your troops. They're your men in this case, and I wanted them all to come back safely. But we also wanted to accomplish the mission. I was confident we could do both.
And you did it.
And we were fortunate we did it. The guys did it. That's pretty great.
I don't know why, but I always think that with, and I told you before we went on the air that I have married into a military family. And it was striking to me that it never seemed like our nephew would talk about being fearful. But you have to be afraid in these in various missions. What made you afraid along the way?
Yeah, I think, you have to be a little bit scared. because that's kind of what keeps you on edge and keeps you looking for potential problem areas. Where are you going to get ambushed? How's the helicopter going to get from point A to point B? If you're not scared going into these missions, then you probably haven't been on them before. You ought to have a little bit of heightened sense of anxiety, and I think every operator does. But the flip side of that is you're very well trained, and you recognize that your training and the support you have from the other members of your team or the military are going to be there to help you out. So, whatever that apprehension is, I think, again, you can reduce some of that concern by realizing you've got great teammates.
All right, so when were you scared? Come on, come plain here. Besides,
I was scared a lot.
Were you scared walking down the aisle with this lovely lady?
Oh, no, that part never scared me. That was easy.
So what was scary? Like, give me an instance where you were like, oh my God, I am scared.
Yeah, for me as a commander, again, during Iraq and Afghanistan, I wasn't, a frontline troop. So I didn't have to go out into combat every day like these, young Rangers, young Special Forces officers and NCOs, the SEALs, the Delta Force operators, the helicopter pilots, everybody that supported us. This 9/11 generation was in hard combat every day. My job was really to ensure we had a kind of a strategic and operational look at it. So most of the time I wasn't in harm's way day in and day out. Now, having said that, I'd try to go out on a mission with them about once a month just to make sure, one, they saw me as a combat leader that, wasn't afraid to take some risk, wasn't afraid to, endure the hardships that they had to endure. And that's important, I think, for any leader. Having said that, my greatest concerns were always to the troops on the ground, because every night we had overhead surveillance. We had predators that we could watch the action unfold in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, when you are back and you are watching these young men, sometimes in firefights, as good as they are, they're your troops. And so if I was ever concerned or anxious, it was always about the welfare of the troops, more in the middle of a combat situation than at any other time.
Now to kind of shift gears. In 2014, you're delivering a commencement speech at the University of Texas, right?
Right.
And first of all, how did that come about? Who asked you to do that?
Well, the president of the university, Bill Powers, asked me to come do the commencement speech at my alma mater, the University of Texas at Austin, and I was thrilled to have the opportunity to do it. And it turned out to be just a fantastic night in Austin in May, and 8,000 students and about 20,000 of their parents and best friends. It was a great evening.
And from that commencement speech comes this slim, elegant, and really terrific book called Make Your Bed.
Every morning in SEAL training, my instructors, who at the time were all Vietnam veterans, would show up in my barracks room, and the first thing they'd do was inspect my bed. If you did it right, the corners would be square, the covers would be pulled tight, the pillow centered just under the headboard, and the extra blanket folded neatly at the foot of the rack. It was a simple task, mundane at best, but every morning we were required to make our bed to perfection. It seemed a little ridiculous at the time, particularly in light of the fact that we were aspiring to be real warriors, tough, battle-hardened SEALs. But the wisdom of this simple act has been proven to me many times over. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed.
Let's start with why you wanted to turn. First of all, by the way, everyone go and check out the speech because it's been downloaded 10 million times, something to that effect. But what made you want to turn it into a book?
Every day, literally every single day since the speech, Saturdays and Sundays included, somebody comes up to me and says, I make my bed. Or, I don't ring the bell, or I don't back down from the sharks. But after they tell me that, then they always ask me, What was it that inspired you? Tell me about your experience as a sugar cookie. Tell me about how you didn't back down. Or who were the people that inspired you? And, for several years, I was just busy, didn't have time to do it, and finally had an opportunity to. It's a small gift book, but I think it has broad appeal. This is not just a book for commencement. I think it's a book for anybody that goes through life that has to deal with failures, that has, great dark moments in life that they have to overcome. So the book was really about people that inspired me.
And let's just start with the number one, which is the title of the book, Make Your Bed. Why is making your bed so important?
Well, at least when I was being raised, my father was an Air Force officer, and my mother was a school teacher in Texas. And my mother ensured, more so than my father, that I made my bed every day. But as a young kid, you don't really understand why, other than your mom wanted you to make your bed. When I got to SEAL training, it was something that the SEAL instructors came in and inspected every day. And I didn't really understand it at first. Look, we're here to be, real SEAL warriors. Why are we worried about making our bed? And then all of a sudden, you have this epiphany, which is they recognize that it was kind of the first task of the day. And if you start off your day right by taking a little pride in making your bed, it's a simple task. And if you do it well, then other tasks will come, and then you'll complete the next task. And so it's kind of the first rung on the ladder in the course of your day. But the other thing about making your bed is it shows that if you do the little things well, then maybe you can do the bigger things well. And the SEAL instructors would make sure if you can't make your bed, if you can't make those hospital corners right, if you don't know how to put your wool blanket at the foot of the bed, if you can't take the time to make your bed correctly, how will you ever be a good SEAL running an important mission? So learn to do the little things right, and then that'll help you do the big things right.
Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. A brass bell that hangs in the center of the compound for all the students to see. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to be in the freezing cold swims. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. All you have to do is ring the bell to get out. If you want to change the world, don't ever ring the bell.
Is there something about SEAL training that is different than any other part of the military? What differentiates the SEAL from, the guy who's in the Army? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I will tell you, I think almost all the Special Forces training are similar in terms of, there's a selection process where, you're looking for, in my case, they were all men. You're looking for men that you think are going to make it through training. You're trying to ensure that they have kind of the right stuff. All of the Special Forces training, the Ranger training, the SEAL training, I would say the thing that differentiates SEAL training is obviously the water. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my great Army brethren, didn't like the part about being cold, wet, and miserable. That doesn't make them any less tough. Let me tell you, I have seen some of the toughest men I've seen are Army Rangers and Army Green Berets, and we like to think SEAL training is the toughest military training out there. But I think all of them stack up as being pretty tough.
Yeah, it would seem so. So one of the other pieces of this, and as you go through and you give the little things that can change your life, you do talk about making sure that you have good teammates, right, and find someone to help you paddle. In the book also you give some great examples in your own life, but I'm just wondering, in your not just career but in your life, talk a little bit about the reliance on others, that team-based approach, because I do feel a tiny bit like sometimes that's lost in this current culture where everyone's sort of sitting alone at a screen, feeling disconnected. How do those connections really foster success?
Well, I talked a little bit about it in the speech, and then I kind of cull it out a little bit in the book. But when you go through SEAL training, you're given what we refer to as an inflatable boat small. It's about an 8 to 10 foot little rubber raft, and you carry it everywhere you go. And the purpose of carrying the raft, it's a 7-man boat crew. But the purpose of carrying it isn't just to carry the boat. It's to recognize that if you're going to get the boat from point A to point B, everybody has to work together as a team. And I don't care whether you're the officer or the junior enlisted guy. If you don't paddle the way you're supposed to paddle, if you don't, stroke hard, if everybody doesn't dig in, then the boat won't get to where it needs to get to. And so the recognition as you go through SEAL training that, you better be a good teammate first. We're called the SEAL teams for a reason. And in fact, when you meet another guy in the SEAL teams, you say, hey, are you in the teams? And so this concept of being a team, everybody having a role to play for you to be successful is important. And then in the book, I talk about the fact that I had a parachute accident back in 2001. Up to that point in my career, I thought, like a lot of SEALs, that maybe I was a little invincible. I'd had some life-threatening situations in the air, underwater, and other places, and I'd always managed to get out of it, but not this time. And so I got pretty banged up in a free-fall parachute jump. And frankly, I thought my career was over. I was banged up that badly. But fortunately, I had a lot of folks, my wife in particular, but my boss, Admiral Eric Olson, friends came by to see me, wished me well, helped me with my therapy, my physical therapy. And I would never be where I am today were it not for the fact that everybody came together to help me through that tough event in my life.
How did that change you going forward when you actually did get injured? Did you change? Did your mindset change about how you approached what you did or how you approached others?
I think, up to that point in time, I always recognized the value of team. But I was never the individual that kind of needed the help in terms of the other team helping me. That was a point in time where I went, I'm just as vulnerable as everybody else. Life can be very, very fragile. I mean, I realized that once again, my life was spared, and it all happened in an instant. I'd had a number of those in my career leading up to the parachute accident, but again, I'd always managed to do the right thing and gotten out of it. Now all of a sudden, I'm badly injured, and realize that, wow, moving forward, this is easier than I thought in terms of the potential to get injured. So after 9/11, this occurred before 9/11. After 9/11, as I watched my soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines and others, and saw the wounds that they suffered, you realize that you needed to be in a position, I needed to be in a position to help them, other people needed to be in a position to help them, because we all need people to help us get through life.
Okay, so this is a way that we're just trying to make sense of 20 years later what we can do. And our piece of this is to present you with a 2-day affair here with Admiral McRaven, author of Make Your Bed, Little Things That Can Change Your Life and Maybe the World. If you have a comment about this, you can feel free to shoot us a note. If you're on the website, it's jillonmoney.com. Hit the contact button. Tomorrow, we will continue this interview. Again, we had recorded this 4 or 5 years ago, so it's an older interview, but it is not dated, meaning that it is still amazing to hear the stories that Admiral McRaven can tell. Try to lift someone up today, especially someone who was impacted by that day 20 years ago. And boy, more than ever, if you think about it, do something nice for somebody. Grit, growth, grace. We have gratitude for everyone who served. We'll talk to you tomorrow.